Today we're going to be working on candied citrus. We're going to do slices, zest, and larger pieces that you could actually dip in chocolate. So we'll make that with our oranges. The first step is to make our simple syrup, and we're going to start with our water and add our sugar and a little bit of corn syrup. That will help prevent the crystallization of our sugar and allow it to adhere to the oranges very well. I'm also going to put some cinnamon sticks in just to give it a little added flavor, completely optional. What we'll do is we'll put this over the stovetop and let this dissolve before it comes to a boil. Okay, so I have my sugar syrup over here on this burner, and over here I just have water that I'm going to bring to a boil because we're going to blanch the zest of the oranges to remove the bitterness from them, and it will also allow it to absorb the sugar solution much better, which will give you a better candied texture. So I want to try and avoid stirring this sugar, water, and corn syrup as much as possible because, again, I don't want to promote any sort of crystallization. So I'm just stirring this gently to kind of swirl it around and make sure there's no sugar stuck to the bottom, which is one of the reasons why I put the water in first and not after the sugar, so keep that in mind. And then I just want it to dissolve before it starts to boil, so it should be clear before you see any bubbles forming inside of there. You absolutely can stir it, but I'm trying to avoid doing that because I don't want any sugar on the sides of the pot where I have to wash it down. So we're going to prepare in the meantime, while these are coming up to temperature, our orange slices. So with the oranges, what we want to do is we want to take the top and the bottom off, not too much, with a chef knife. Just cut the top and the bottom. And you do want to work with an orange. A navel is best because it generally has a thicker skin to it, and that will be great for our candied orange peel. So what I want to do is just kind of cut. There are multiple ways to do this. One way is just to cut strips around this way. Don't worry about the meat yet. We're going to take that off. So this is one way of cutting it off. I'm going at an angle, so I start here and I really am using the front part of my knife to have more control, and I'm angling it all the way to the bottom, so I'm not taking off the bottom portion. And then please reserve this orange and go ahead and juice it or eat it, whatever you'd like to do. Then we can come back here, and again, multiple ways of doing this portion is that you can take your knife and then you can kind of carve this out, or you can grab a melon baller and kind of scoop it out of there as well. So essentially what you want to do is you want to scrape the membrane away from the pith, which is the white part of the skin. So just kind of scoop using that sharp portion of this. You can definitely use a sharper spoon if you have it, like a grapefruit spoon might work well, but I'm trying to remove all that membrane there and the meat of the orange. So once again, kind of scooping it. Melon baller is nice because it's usually got a pretty sharp edge to it. So it does the job really, really well. So we're going to do this for all of these, and then we're going to slice them into nice strips. So another way to do this, and I find to be more efficient, and you can control the size of your strip a little bit more, is to cut the top and bottom off again. Go ahead and get rid of that. And just take one section and open it up. And then the rest of it, you can take a paring knife or your chef knife and kind of carve the inside out from here. Again, you have to be aware that it is at an angle. And then remove the center part of the orange and then cut it in half just so it's easier to work with, so it's open. And then you can start with the melon baller. You should be able to get the membrane to get started and then just peel it out like you would peel the skin off the orange anyway. So it's kind of like an inside out way of peeling the orange. And I find that to be much more efficient and actually a lot cleaner. So now we want to cut our strips so they're ready to go into the boiling water. And I like to cut them open like this instead of like this because I feel like you're going to get a cleaner cut. And I would say about a 1/4 inch thick. Again, if your intention is to dip them in chocolate or just use them as a garnish, this is a pretty good size. Any smaller than that, you know, it's okay, but this is substantial and it tastes really good. If you happen to have some overhang there with just the pith, try and clean that up so you have nice straight edges. So I'm gonna go and do this for all of these slices, and then we're gonna take them over to our boiling water and blanch them. Now that our water has come to a boil, I have ready here an ice bath with a strainer so that I can remove the orange peels very easily. We're going to blanch the orange peels for 1 minute. So I'm going to time it for a minute, and then I'm going to strain this out and place it into the ice bath. We're going to refresh the water and do the same process one more time. All right, now it's time to strain our orange peels. So I'm going to take my strainer here and then immediately place that into an ice bath. While that's cooling, I'm going to replace my water and bring it to a boil again. So my water has come to a boil for a second time, and I'm going to add my orange slices back into here. Go ahead and count for 1 minute and then strain it again into the ice bath. Once your sugar syrup solution comes to a simmer, I'm going to reduce this down just a bit. We're ready to go ahead and cook our orange peel. So this is the strained orange peel. I'm going to just put this right into here. And this is going to cook for about an hour. It's going to simmer though, so make sure that you do adjust your heat, especially once you put it in, it's going to lower the heat. So keep adjusting and make sure that it's at a simmer. So all my orange peels are in here, and we're going to let this simmer for about an hour, and we'll come back and we'll check it. I'll check it about halfway so you can see what it should look like in about 30 minutes. Here's what our candied orange peel looks like about halfway through. So we're at 30 minutes. And it's just starting to get there. It's not really translucent yet, and that's kind of what we're looking for to tell when it's absorbed most of that sugar syrup solution within the rind. So we're gonna let it keep going, and I'll put the timer on again. Our sugar syrup has been boiling with our rinds for about an hour. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drain this. Now, don't drain this over the sink because that's like liquid gold right there. You can reuse that sugar syrup for pretty much anything you would need a simple syrup for. So please reserve that in the refrigerator. It'll be fantastic for drinks, for pretty much anything. You want to glaze something like a cake with it, go for it. So what I want to do is get most of the excess of that off before I end up placing that onto the rack here. And I'm going to use tongs because these are extremely hot. And what I want to do is let these dry without touching each other. And then later, about 8 hours later or so, I'm going to go ahead and flip them so they don't completely stick to the rack. And therefore they're going to dry on all of their sides. And then tomorrow they should be done. So really give it enough time to sufficiently dry before you package them up, because then they'll stay sticky. And we want them to be completely dry on the outside. So I'm going to continue doing this, and then we will revisit this after they are cooled enough and dry enough on one side. After letting my slices sit overnight, you can see that they're nice and set, and I can pick them up. They've got a beautiful shine to them. So I'm going to store these now in a container in between layers of parchment paper, very, very lightly sprayed with some pan spray so that they do not stick to each other or the paper. And we'll store those at room temperature until use. For our candied citrus slices, we want to take a variety of citrus. I have lemons, a cara orange, which is kind of like a pink orange, and I have a blood orange here too. So I'm going to do a variety of citrus. We're going to follow the same technique for all of them. The key here is to make sure that you have a sharp chef knife. So really make sure that you sharpen your knife first and you take your time slicing through, because you want these to be as thin as possible. This probably won't work on a mandolin if you have it, so just take your time making sure that your slices are nice and thin and they're even. So if you happen to have pits in them, kind of take those out and you will notice that they'll cut a little bit smoother. So I'm gonna go ahead and slice a variety of our citrus, and then we'll move on to the next step. I have my slices ready to go, and I'm ready to blanch them in my boiling water. Now, because this has the meat on it as well, so the actual orange and lemon, we're only going to blanch this once because I don't want the insides to fall apart, whereas the rind is a lot more stable. So this you have to be a little bit more gentle and careful with. So we are going to blanch it for 1 minute, put it into ice water for about 20 seconds, and then drain it and let that drain, and then we'll move to the next step. So this is the last of the blanching for the citrus slices. They're all done, and I'm going to start some more sugar syrup solutions the same way we did the candied orange rind, and we're just going to cook them for a little bit less. All right, so our sugar solution is boiling. I'm going to add my slices. These are the blanched citrus slices, giving it enough space to move around in there. So use the wider pot if necessary. I'm going to do the orange ones in this one. And I'm just going to let that simmer. Again, I'm going to check it in about 20 minutes and see where it's at. The sugar syrup will start to get a little thicker, a little bit more bubbles in there, and then you know it's getting close when the rinds look a little bit translucent. You can see how white they are right now. That will change a little bit. So we'll check on it in a little bit. Now that our candied slices have simmered plenty of time, I'm going to drain off the slices. Capture and save the simple syrup, because that really is delicious. And then I'm going to remove these and place them onto a silicone mat. Now I'm going to do 3 different techniques, and you guys can choose which ones work best for you. But I'm going to air dry one pan, dry one in a 200-degree oven, and then another one I'm going to place into my dehydrator and see the timing of how all that comes out. So I'm going to do all 3 in each mode. I do find that the lemons tend to fall apart very easily compared to the oranges when you simmer them. So just be very careful not to cut the lemons too thin. They do kind of pull apart from there. So I'm gonna go ahead and place one in the oven, leave one to air dry, and then place one in my dehydrator. These are the slices that I did in the food dehydrator. You can see that they are all set. They're still very pliable. If you do want them crunchy, you want to let them go a lot longer, but these have a really nice chew to them, so it really depends on what application you're using them for. But they're all set, and these should last for a couple weeks at room temperature in a airtight container. These are the ones that I dried out in the oven and low 200 degrees for as long as it takes, really, again, depending on what your use is, and you want them to be nice and firm, not sticky on either side. So you can keep turning them over as you keep dehydrating them in the oven. If you leave them at room temperature, they're going to take a lot longer to dry out, and it really benefits from having the oven to dry them out over a period of time. They're nice and shiny, and they are not sticky at all.